Hi, I'm Dave Klein, and this is the Cymulate Cybersecurity Newscast. I do love success stories, and I think this first one is one. Cisco Talos, the cybersecurity research arm of Cisco, was able to put down in vivid details all the information around an attack by an initial access broker tied to the Lapsus ransomware gang, Yang Lao Wang, pardon me, it's hard to say, ransomware gang, and UNC2447. These are all three financially motivated ransomware players, and this initial access broker got in through an employee who had stored and cached their credentials in a Chrome browser, so got a hold of the person's Google account and then subsequently their username and password for the Cisco VPN. They then bypassed multi-factor authentication, and the article doesn't actually say which way worked, but one was voice phishing, also known as phishing. They called him or her up and pretended to be the tech support from the company several times apparently. And the other one was MFA fatigue, where they just hit the phone constantly to reset username and password, which a person finally did. And basically they used that to enroll a new bunch of devices for multi-factor authentication as that Cisco employee was able to do administrative escalation privileges and things like that when they were finally caught by Cisco. It's a great report that goes into how they approached this breach, how they took care of it. There's all the indicators of compromises and TTPs in there, as well as it tied to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. A great educational article to look at to see the right way to handle a breach and disclose it. This next story I've been following since Sunday when it was first announced by Ukrainian military sources. And I waited until I had a lot of cross-references and other press covering it before I would cover it. It really is quite fascinating. More of a physical security story than cybersecurity, but there's cyber as part of this. So it's very important to hear this. So basically this weekend, a TV reporter named Sergei Shreda met with an elite group of Russian military people in eastern Ukraine, a group called the Wagner Group. The Wagner Group is known to be a mercenary group that is really controlled by Putin. It's kind of part of the military, kind of not, and they use it for deniable plausibility. This group had done horrible things in Syria, and apparently aren't doing nice things in the Ukraine either. This is the way that they get away with, the Russian government gets away with doing negative things and not saying it was them, but saying it's another group. But anyway, there's a lot of nationalism around the Wagner Group, and the TV reporter, who's a very pro-Putin person, met with them and on his Telegram account put up pictures of him shaking hands with the founder of that group. So basically saying that that founder was in Eastern Europe. And not only in Eastern Europe, but in Eastern Ukraine. On top of that, these next two photos here, he gave away the address to their headquarters here and here. So even if the TV announcer had disabled geolocation in the photos, there in the picture, you have the address and you have the head of that organization is present at that address. Within hours, Ukrainian HIMARS rockets leveled that facility, and apparently there were some people wounded and some people dead. The real takeaways here, in executive security, in large organizations or even small organizations, if you have executives traveling globally, if you have your people, not only just executives, any of your people traveling globally, you really need to educate them on the power of social media and the problems with it, and the fact that it could be very easily turned into a way to locate where you are for compromise. Very interesting story. This August Patch Tuesday, we saw a number of major vulnerabilities patched, about 121, including the dog walk Windows vulnerabilities that we had seen in the wild and talked about last week. And there also was 3 related to Exchange. And one of the messages that came across in these patching was kind of important for email hygiene, so I'm going to go over it right now. They talked about the 3 Exchange vulnerabilities that were patched. In order to truly be protected against them, you need to enable extended protection, Microsoft extended protection for Exchange. So what is this? You know how much I talk about needing multi-factor authentication and other major hygiene things that are fundamental to be successful. Well, in this situation here, what this does is prevent man-in-the-middle attacks. A lot of the man-in-the-middle attacks that come from legacy authentication weaknesses. So finally what Microsoft is doing is saying, hey, listen, we're at a point you need to really enable the extended protection. there's some steps to do this, and I'll put a link in the notes section of the video on their recommendations. But again, if you're running Exchange on premises, you really need to enable extended protection. And of course, as you always know, I have from past conversations here, I always think that at this point, there's really no reason to run Exchange by yourself. You should run it as a managed service in the cloud and not have to worry about that. But again, if you do run it still, please look at the notes section of this video. We have 2 great broadcasts coming up this week. First one's Wednesday, August 17th at 2 p.m. I'll be interviewing Chuck Brooks, and we'll have a long conversation. It's about preempting cyber attack disruptions, critical factors. We'll get into things about what it really means to run a proactive enterprise, talk about business continuity and resilience, and the importance of successful proactive cybersecurity programs. Join us. I'll put a link to that broadcast in the notes section of the video. The second one is Thursday, August 18th, available from 9 a.m. Eastern Time on. It's the Cisco Series podcast. I'll be joining host David Spark and also Jeff Belknap, who's the CISO of LinkedIn, and discussing all sorts of things about cybersecurity, about users, about how we determine what's most important, talking a little bit about cybersecurity and Cymulate and continuous security posture, validation, and management. I'll also put a link to the notes in the notes section of the video to that broadcast as well. So again, 2 great broadcasts to see this week. I'm Dave Klein, and that's a Cymulate Cybersecurity Newscast for the week. Have a great week. Stay safe.